Hi, and welcome to Write More Light. My name is Sarah. This is the Midwest Writing Center, and you are watching Write More Light. For those unfamiliar with the show, once a week we do a interview with somebody cool doing cool things in the arts, and once a week we do a super short writing lesson. Today we are lucky enough to be doing the interview part, and we have with us John. Is it Hagar? I forgot to ask.
Yeah, we say Hagar.
We say Hagar. John Hagar from Galvin Fine Arts Center at Saint Ambrose University. And we're going to talk about the Radical Hospitality Project. John, thank you so much for hanging out with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's fun.
Can you, we're going to do some like real slow warm up questions. Can you tell me how you ended up at Galvin?
Uh, well, I am actually a St. Ambrose alum. I studied art and design at St. Ambrose. Um, I worked in marketing freelance and design freelance before becoming the marketer for the Galvin Fine Arts Center. Um, the previous director changed jobs, and here we are today. So
Awesome. So you studied fine arts when you were a student.
yes.
Can you tell me what about those arts you're excited about? Can you tell me what your favorite medium is or what you like to study? Why do you
Uh,
love art? You know, we can make it like a really big question.
yeah, as big as possible. I personally, I do digital art. What I really like to do is 3D modeling, texturing, shading, and that sort of stuff. In the physical manifestations, I really like printmaking. Also like to do pen and ink drawings, that sort of thing. Um, I think that all of the things about art for me is the narrative quality of it. So visual narratives is a big theme around St. Ambrose in their art department. And I actually have a degree in English as well. So I think that what it is about art is the stories that they tell and what they say about what it is to be a human, and how that's communicating those ideas helps to expand empathy when they experience art. So that's
You're just like speaking straight to my heart. That's a just smacked my cat on accident. That's a super, I don't know, special spot for me. When I talk about art, I always like on this show in particular, which is called Write More Light, I'm always like, to your art, not necessarily your writing. And I don't need to do that. I don't need to clarify that, but it's always very important to me to be like, this isn't literary exclusive. Art is art. Made me really happy to hear that. Thank
in
you.
my writing life, I do um, more sort of, I like to write the metaphysics out of classical texts, which is really fun. I got one piece published a while ago called The Coercion of St. Paul, which sort of takes all of the magic out of the conversion of Paul. So it's a fun story.
That fun is the word I was going to use, and then I was like, maybe I should rethink that. No, definitely. I love that twist on that story. Um, I'm excited to see that. I'm gonna look that up and I'll throw it in the comments for folks who want to find it as well. Um, when you my questions are sort of out of order and I'm trying to redo them. Okay, so when we talk about the narrative of a piece of visual art, I know this is like not where we're going in the end with this topic, but it's, like I said, a really special piece in my heart. Can you talk about that a little bit in terms of um, when we study art, when we're looking at art, how we find the narrative?
It's a good question.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
No, I like it. And it really has to do with part of like the philosophy I study, like also because in speaking, it's conversation is there's not only a reader or a speaker, there's also a listener and an absorber sort of thing. So I think that a lot of things, the original intent of the author actually doesn't matter anymore. And some things it does, and some things are lost to history. There's plenty of symbols and iconography that we don't even understand anymore. So I think that a lot of the messages that we take from art are inside of ourselves already. So if the art is timely or it speaks more archetypical, I think that reading icons and images the same way that we read words are how we translate things. The more distant we are in languages, I think the less translates. So like one of my favorite artists is Hokusai. And I can't pretend that I understand Japanese art of the 1800s. But I really love the images, but I think that it says more about me than it says about Hokusai's art. So
Yeah, I love that. I think that's, especially when you said it kind of doesn't matter what they're, I know that sounds crappy, but when we look at any kind of art, right, there's a forgive the phrasing, but there's an intertextuality to it. It's interacting with what came before. It's interacting with whatever it is that the creator is doing, thinking, saying, being. But you're right. As the end step in this process, the observer is the person who gives it meaning.
right.
Oh man, I totally did not mean to go here. I'm so excited that we did. But I can get back to our scheduled programming. I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna kind of try to warm up a little bit with could you please define radical hospitality? That's what we're here to talk about. I know I've got the text. I thought about just reading it, but I think it's more human this way.
To try and like simplify, because I think that the text is involved, and I know that the content is written by an author and a theologian, and they want to be very precise in their words, but I think that it really comes down to a sort of version of the golden rule, which is the not the normal do unto others, but that what you do to others, you do to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's part that, and I think it's also like in ancient Greek and ancient Rome, like hospitality was this really huge thing because you never knew if you were hosting the gods. So when the stranger knocked at your door, you welcomed them in, assuming that they could be a god. And I think that that's radical hospitality for me, is that when you open the door, not knowing, but you treat them essentially the best that you can. So.
You know, in one, that's beautiful, and that's what I was thinking when you said the golden rule. I went to a Bible story. I don't remember much from my catechism classes, but it was very much like, no, that stranger was me, is something that Jesus says. So that's great. But I learned recently, it's relatively, oh no, I'm gonna totally not say the correct country when I'm saying this. There is a place uh, in which in houses and apartments that are built close together, there are windows that attach the homes, and folks will leave food for each other in case their neighbor is hungry, or because their neighbor is hungry, and the houses are just built this way. I cried when I learned that. Of course, a woman was telling me about her experience when she was hungry. But I never would have, connected it to this moment. I think that there are some cultures that are, based around mutual aid, just taking care of people because they're in your community, and it's the norm in those places. And that was one of the topics that I've been mulling over as I, do some promotion of this project that we're working on. Is, how is our culture built around the idea of hospitality? And I think ours is not. And so, that was one of the things that I thought of. I have a friend, author Sarah.elgatian. She's of the Desi diaspora. She wrote a book called All This Could Be Different, I believe is what it's called. If I can shout out somebody's book while I'm talking, I should. And she started, what's it called? Bed-Stuy Strong in early 2020. It's a mutual aid group in Bed-Stuy, and it ended up being in New York City, ended up being very strong. It's ongoing. They have like book groups now. And she said that like she didn't realize she was starting a movement or a project or anything, because it was just something she grew up with. And what she did was created a social media account so people could find each other. She didn't think she was doing anything interesting or big or abnormal. It was just what was done growing up. So that's an interesting realization that I'm having in this moment, that hospitality is not something that we learn so much here. At least, I guess in the States is what I'm thinking. I don't know much about
we're
other
very
cultures.
individual focused, and we have these sorts of misconceptions about self-made and all of these things, when the idea of one human is absurd. Like that anything can be self-made is essentially absurd, or it's applying a sort of a godlike quality to the individual when they said, oh, I made this business from the ground up. And it's like, but did you make the roads? Did you make did you make the environment? And I think that we are so individual that it's always me, that we get away from this, that others, our, us, we, our others. And I think that's, I think that one of the good things about this radical hospitality project at Saint Ambrose and with MWC is that one of the core, because we are a Christian school, we are a Catholic school, we need to remember who Jesus was interested in helping. And it's not those who had everything that they need, but rather those who didn't. And the more that we can get into the community, the more that we can let our light shine, like, the better it is for me. Like, to take a totally cynical approach to social justice, a less cruel world is good for me.
I mean, it's true. Yeah. And sometimes you have to put it on the face like that. I met someone once who did political activism, and his primary thing that he did, which was unique to him, and it was always a shock to the people he was working for or with, was that he turned whatever the issue was around to be like, here's how it's self-serving for you to support this thing. And it was usually like taxes, right? It was usually like, do you really want your taxes to do this? That's your money that's going to end up. But you're right. I mean, we would ideally not be thinking about it that way. Ideally, we would be like, I'm doing this because it's the thing to do. But it's true. Like, a safer place, a healthier place is better for me. A more giving place is better for me.
Yeah, I've sort of tried to, because I want to be an advocate for a less cruel world, I've tried to come up with a sort of a cynical view on it. And when I mean cynic, I just mean somebody who looks out for their own interest. So, like, feeding hungry people means there's less desperate people. desperate people do dangerous things. Desperate people could engage in harmful behavior. So it's good for me if there's less hungry people. It's good for me if there's less suffering in the world, because not only do I believe that others are me and I am others, but in a real cynical way, helping others helps me.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that that's been the way that I can try to advocate for a less cruel world in the United States, where we are so individually focused. It's not saying do it because it's good for them, it's saying do it because it's good for you.
And that's, you know, oh man, I'm so like, I very much want to dive into that. And I feel like probably I'll get us both in trouble if I do. But it's just, I mean, it's evidence-based. That line of thinking is evidence-based. There's tons of research nobody wants to look at out there, verifying the claims that you've made. And it's, yeah, it's like a housing first model is the thing that gets people off the streets. Because if no, I'm gonna like really go down this rabbit hole. I started out my grown-up life in social work, and it's just so easy for me to derail. You said something about, you know, you're working within a Catholic institution, and so much of the work that you do will be intersectional with Catholicism, I imagine. I meant interdisciplinary, but they're both true. I went to a Jesuit university, and when we talked about liberation theology, which was it was cool. We had to, I just unplugged my computer. We had to take a class on Catholicism. We had to take a class that was not Catholicism, right? But when we talked about liberation theology, the entire point of that was, if you don't know someone's struggles, you cannot serve them. And that's not something I hear ever, really. We're like, let's throw money at the problem. Someone else will figure out how to spend the money. But knowing there's a problem and knowing how to help someone who has that problem are very, very different things. So thinking about, I'm circling back, thinking about radical hospitality in the context of liberation theology. Really, I don't think I have ever talked about theology on this series, and we're ending year 3.
Wow.
That's fun. That can't be true. I've had pastors on. Anyway, it's a really cool connection to like how you're saying with I am the other is the same as there's no salvation outside of compassion. I don't know. I'm getting babbly because I'm excited. Okay, so forgive me. Now the reason I've asked you, you know this, but whoever's hanging out, listening to me prattle on, may not know that the reason that I asked you to define radical hospitality is because you have created this wonderful project I'm personally very invested in, surrounding the concept of radical hospitality. Can you tell me how, first, we're going to do this step by step. Can you tell me how this idea came to you?
Well, we were the person who started the theme radical hospitality, because every year the College of Arts and Sciences at Saint Ambrose, we have a theme, and then we create events around the theme. And the theologian, Dr. Lisa Powell, is the one that chose radical hospitality for this year. And we were kind of like brainstorming back and forth what kind of events we could have like on this sort of topic. And one thing that they wanted to do was generate a podcast of different people talking about their experiences with hospitality and the opposite, the sort of, probably the more common story is not not those that help, but those that are harmed. Um, but in the sort of like building towards soliciting these people to do a podcast, like kind of came to me that we could do more. And I'm a writer and I'm invested in the writing community locally. So I thought that it would be really cool if what we could do is do a call for submissions for short microfiction, micro nonfiction, flash fiction, short poetry, this sort of thing along the topic. Then out of those chosen, we could get podcasts. And so I thought that was really good. But then I, of course, wanted to go even a step further because the Galvin Fine Arts Center is a big place, and I want it to be full of all different types of art. And I think that one thing that's not represented that often in Galvin is the literary arts, written and spoken word, although it is some. We're more focused on music, fine art, visual fine arts, and theater. So I thought that it would be really cool if we could bring a lot of people in and do a poetry contest. Why not? And hopefully we have a big enough prize that there will be quite a few people that come, try to get that, and even more important, get together, hear other people tell their stories. So
But first of all, yes, I'm so excited.
me too.
But I mean, especially like, today in this world in which everything has to be a marketable skill. And of course, language it's the way it's our primary form of communication. We don't, as people who are trying to make ends meet or whatever, we don't like to do labor that isn't appreciated, that isn't paid.
Right.
And art is a labor, even if it's the labor that we need, even if it's the thing that propels us forward, the thing that we're most passionate about. So seeing paid opportunities for writers is one of the things that I most appreciate in the world, and especially seeing an opportunity for community building, an opportunity for real introspection, and art that's also paid, that also is a conversation inside the community. I mean, this is like properly all of my dreams in one project. I'm really excited to, anytime we can do a publication, I get excited. I think the world just needs more books. Like, but more than that, the world needs more stories. I said this to some poor soul who was at the writing center yesterday and did not ask me for my take. But people in fiction in particular love to say there are only like 6 or 8 stories total in the world. And that drives me nuts, because there are so many of us who haven't told our stories. So many of us who are discouraged from telling our stories, whatever that means, right? In whatever form it comes, be it, visual or audio or written, whatever. And also whether it be fiction or true, whatever true really means. In the context of fiction, it's difficult. We're discouraged from things like that, from thinking, oh, well, someone else already had this idea, or, I'm not the most interesting person who had this thing happen to them. You're the only you that's ever been. And you definitely have something to say, because you exist. We live in a world in which the body's a political object. Like, of course you have something to say. So this opportunity, I think, is doing really, really wonderful strides in both of those avenues of, yes, please tell your story. I'm always looking for a way to say, hey, person who calls themselves not a non-writer or doesn't call themselves a writer, please tell your story, because I think we all have something to say on radical hospitality. But also you who very much want to be a writer, here's here's a way to, to get rewarded for that bravery.
Yeah. It's a good place to start too, because it's not some, 70,000 word novel you need to scribe. It's like, just tell a conversational short, story, just like an anecdote you might tell somebody at the bus stop. Like, it's a short enough thing that it's entry level, but also master writers can really try and, condense down and like get to like this jewel of a piece. So I think that the short word length, I think, is good for beginners, and it also can really test the skill level of the masters too. So
Yeah, I want to say it's 500 words. Is that right?
500 words. Yep,
That is a small nugget.
it is.
I spoke with someone recently. I feel like today is the day that I name drop. I'm so sorry. I interviewed Grant Faulkner recently about his book about flash writing. And he was saying how, he's a novel writer, or was, how writing short work is the hardest thing in the world. And so that's like echoing in my brain, but you're right. Like, that is not, that's not how that should be. This is the way we talk to each other. We don't tell, like you said, 70,000 word stories. That's just not how people are.
We don't have the attention span for that.
Certainly not. Certainly not in conversation. Okay. Back to my questions. So we're looking at a publication and a performance, both of which pay. The works that are chosen for publication will receive $100. And then those folks who are chosen for publication are invited to be recorded. Now, that's for a podcast? Is that right?
Yep, for our College of Arts and Sciences, the CAS theme, Radical Hospitality, has a podcast, and probably they will be combined into 2 episodes, depending on the length. But yeah, the winners will come in actually before the contest, so it'll be a good chance for them to practice a little. They'll read it on the mic, and then we'll actually record live so that we can incorporate audience participation into the final product. So,
oh, that's cool. I didn't know that part.
Yeah.
And then that performance, which is not required of folks, but we're asking folks who are published to participate in both that podcast recording and this performance. Is it five
$500 for the first prize, and $150 for second prize, $75 for third prize. I think we're gonna have some other prizes too. But it's also going to be audience voting. So it will be, the people there will be participating on their phones. It's short, they'll come out, they'll say their name, their number will pop up. You can say how well were they on the theme, was it engaging, this sort of thing. And I think it'll be really interesting dynamic to see like what the audience chooses, because so often, in writing especially, it's a panel or these sorts of people, not the audience. The audience votes by buying the product or not. This is a different sort of a scenario where the audience actually gets to pick who they think is the best. So I think that's going to be really fun for me, because I mean, essentially what I do is event management, event facilitating. So getting the audience to actually participate in choosing the contest winner is really going to be fun.
Yeah, I've never done anything like that where with that element to it. I agree that it'll be cool, but I also feel like bring your friends.
Yeah, there will be I don't want to get like into the technical side of it that much, but there will be a weight point for, you can put your weight on this person, say I'm here for this person, and that it won't change the average of the scores, but it will lend a weight, like a weighted grade, depending. Also, if you just go through and there's one person that's 10 on everything and then everybody else is 0, we'll be thrown out. Just because it's good to vote for your people and you can give them 100%, but I want people to honestly look at the other writers and to give them a good listen and try to be critical, in a constructive way without just being like, not my friend, I hate it. So that will be all outlined obviously at the event, but it's going to be a challenge, but I think it's going to be really fun.
No, that's a really great way to just like get that out there. Like that's awesome. And good thinking. I am not super familiar with like voting apps. Hey, it's election day. So I'm glad to hear how well thought through this is. What no. Who do you want to see involved in this project?
Well, I'd like to see a good cross section. I would like to see people whose stories aren't heard often, obviously, but I would also like to see people who might think that their story is just the generic macro story, because they might be the person that tells the story of the macro in a unique way. I want to see that. I'd like to see some younger kids involved. I'd like to see some SIU students come out as well and try and speak their piece, and put their take a risk. So ideally everybody, obviously, but I'd like, if we could get a good range, I would like that.
Yeah, I mean that's why I asked really, because I feel like the easy answer is everyone, right?
Yeah.
And it's I would say probably true. I guess I'm not the god of this project. You're the creator of this project. But I can't, that's a me problem all the time. I'm like, I want everyone. But yeah, there's a lot of people I think who just tend to not have their stories told. And part of that is by virtue of being one in need of hospitality. And then, of course, like you were saying, if we don't include the everyday stories, then that's silly. Like you're missing so much. You're missing so much of, oh God, of the beauty of every day, right?
Right.
Because we do see beautiful things all the time. There's a student I was working with for a while who was writing a poem about gratitude, and the most jarring section of this piece, now she had a lot of really cool stuff going on. She talked about big things, she talked about little things, right? But the most jarring section of this poem was about someone who let her cut in line at the grocery store. And I mean, well, that's cool. I love, when somebody's like, oh, you only have one thing, go ahead. And I, will say thank you, and I'll be grateful to not wait in line for 30 years. But she's 11, I think, this writer. It startled her. And the way she described it was really, really powerful because it was a surprise. It was, the only person who benefited was, the people who got to move forward in line. No one else benefited. And it affected her day. And that's totally something that happens every day at every grocery store, probably. But if you can navigate the emotions of that moment, if you can navigate the implications of that moment, I mean, it was really powerful. What is the goal of this project?
Well, I think that there's a range of goals, but for me, in my work life, my goal is always to get more people into the Galvin Fine Arts Center. So I'm an artist and a writer, and I love these things, and I want people to come experience them. I really want them to come experience them here. So that is my goal, but I think that at a larger level, I always want people to understand each other better. Like, empathy and expanding empathy is one of the things that I want to do all the time and encourage others to do. One of the greatest ways to expand empathy is by reading. And I think that every time somebody comes into a space, like especially a new space, and they're exposed to something new, their vocabulary grows, and therefore their empathy grows. And expanding empathy is a way to a less cruel world. And that is what I want. I want to live in a less cruel world. So.
That's beautiful. That's also evidence-based. There's lots of plenty of studies out there showing that reading is a way that both children and adults learn empathy, and also sharing story with one another. So when you talk about the experience that you had with another person, that also builds those things. I know when I, move somewhere new, and I have to like force myself to do things because I don't have friends in this place, and I don't have plans because I don't have friends or whatever it is. That the number one way of, and I'll say first that I am an introvert and going outside is scary. But the number one way that I have made friends and I don't know, felt better about moving to the big scary place where I have moved is by taking a chance on events, right? Now, am I, predisposed to being interested in the arts? Totally. But I would argue that we all are. It's the human condition. But I love, you sort of positioned it like it was like, well, this is my job. So, but truly, like, if we had all the freedom in the world to go to the events that sound interesting, and also like we weren't assuming we were going to be tired because we had other things to do. Of course, the first thing we should do is find an arts event. And I'm just getting really daydreamy. I'm so sorry. But I love that, because the point of what I was saying was that when I have moved places, when I've been new in a place, the place to find connection always happens to be the art event. And it's also like way less scary than going to like bingo at a bar.
Sure.
things that don't necessarily make you friends.
Right.
We've talked about this a bit, because it's the point of why we're here. Why is this project important? I mean, a better world, right? We've established for sure.
Right.
I'm thinking, I'm going to try not to interrupt you. I'm so sorry.
I think that this event is important because it's a good test case for literary arts on the stage, here at Ambrose, and I think in the larger like Quad City community. I think that it's easier to have a small reading than to have a huge reading. And I like to have really big events. Like, so I think that it's a good test case for like, can we get the spoken word on the stage, and can we like kindly coerce the community to participate? Like, and I think that people love reading more than they admit, for all kinds of reasons. Most of us spend most of our time reading on our phones, and all that all the time. And then we're like, I hate reading. It's like, well, you just read every single article that was out, you know. So I think that it's important. It's important to get the literary arts on the stage for itself, but it's also to sort of feel the boundaries of the larger community and to see where we can go with future events in this sort of genre.
Dope. Yes. I was thinking actually that last thing that you said was what was on my mind, where it's like, this is I guess in some ways a time capsule, but it's a a way that we can say, like, look, this is where we are. This is where we live. This is the conditions in which we live here and now. And it's okay. I'm always looking for, I saw something really beautiful. Somebody sent me, it's like a internet post, but it was about, I'm seeing if I can find it now. It was about, not that. Hope is not delicate. Hope has dirt on her face, blood on her knuckles, the grit of cobblestones in her hair, and spat out a tooth as she rises for another go. And I think a project like this, which looks at how we take care of each other, especially when we have no obligation to one another, is going to nourish us. I'm so touched to be able to like interact with this project. I think that it's going to be really, really important. And I have to respond to folks who may believe that they don't love reading, as if watching TV is that different from reading when it started out written, as if listening to music is different from reading when it started out written.
Right.
It drives me nuts, this like false dichotomy between kinds of art. We're always engaging with text, whether or not we're reading it, because there are folks who believe that comics and audiobooks are not books. So what do I know? Yeah. But you're right. I think that I think we've been tricked into thinking that reading is something that nerds do or something. I know folks believe that I read a ton. I do. I love reading. I know that about myself. I've already said in this conversation that the world needs more books. But when I'm tired or stressed, I can't read. It just takes little enough more effort that it can't be done. And I think that's probably more what our problem is. Our problem is that we're tired.
Yeah.
Not that we hate reading, because we're going to listen to our podcasts and watch our shows. It's just a slightly less interactive version of reading. Right. Off my soapbox. This is a little bit off topic, but I thought that I would be remiss if I didn't go for it. What are some of your favorite works of art that have influenced social change, or people being better people?
I think, well, that's so huge.
Yeah, I know. I'm so sorry. I've been, I had this question written down, but
Yeah.
I've been staring at just barely the corner of a Caravaggio over there. And I'm like,
Nah. That's,
I think that's Judith though. So probably not that one.
well, on my wall of fame is Mark Z. Danielewski, who wrote House of Leaves.
Mhm.
And I don't know how much it has affected any sort of social change, but I think that the message of House of Leaves is that things are bigger on the inside than on the out. And I think that that is what writing is. It's that a book is only this big, but a world can be contained in it. You know, there can be twists and turns and tunnels and darkness, lights, universes, everything. And I think that that speaks to me in a way. Something like Caravaggio, he tells a huge story in a small painting. In a similar way that Mark Z, well, his books are not small, but they're
I,
huge
I think
inside.
I have a book of his that's like 300 pages.
Yeah, yeah. He's my favorite, probably contemporary writer, honestly. Just House of Leaves, I should say, just because it really speaks to me in my philosophy, in my art, and in what I think that language is not some tool. Language is everything, like quite literally everything. And I can't imagine things that exist outside of language. So when we downplay language, we say, oh, it's just these words, or it's just language is just a tool. That's absurd. Language is logos. Language is God. I mean, to say that, you know, to quote the Bible, John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. And the Word made its dwelling among us. I mean, now I'm getting crazy. Okay, I better take.
No, that was so beautiful. I really expected you to be like, Guernica, goodbye, conversation over. Which is, by the way, the only painting I can think of right now. So it wasn't like I was ready to go with a painting. It was just that seemed like, I guess, an easy answer. I
Something
was
like
so caught
Luca's.
off guard with the House of Leaves, and I'm so delighted
Oh
by the message you've received from it. I totally just talked over you. Please go ahead.
no, I was just trying to think of painting specifically that, but there's so many that it's hard for me to like even something maybe like Mucha. Alphonse Mucha is like my idol because, you know, he used art to sell things. He has the very famous JOB cigarette papers in the Art Nouveau style, and everybody knows about Art Nouveau because of Alphonse Mucha. But he also has the epic of the Slavic people. He has his huge works that show the plight of the Slavic Empire and all of this. It really moving, like non-commercial sort of like elements. I love him because I'm like him. I try to use art to sell things. Luckily, I get to sell art for a living. So, but he also, like, his more visual narratives that are not just commercial are very impacting. You look up to him.
Sorry, I'm looking up you know, the not ads. Because yeah, when I think of him, I think of you know, a woman standing in a place holding a thing, right? So that was really, really wonderful. But I was so caught off guard by House of Leaves, and also the message that you got from it, because I felt like when I read that book, I was so much trying to get it, right? Like so much of my focus went to getting what was going on, which is not the way to read, but how do you not with a book like that?
Yeah.
And you know, sitting with with your take. I'm like, that's obviously correct. What the hell is wrong with me? And also like it's contemporary and it I mean it's difficult to read because it's not what we're used to reading, but it's also not like so deep. Like I thought it was going to be really deep, because all these cool people love it so much. I think you're so right about that. That's so much fun. And also like I use the term social change, which is such a big thing and could definitely be like it is definitely like a huge pressure question, but that's not really it. How many of us are moved, right? There's now I'm getting excited because I'm thinking of things. Matthew Quick is an author. I can't remember his famous book. Silver Linings Playbook is a book of his, and it got turned into a movie and it got people talking about mental illness. Like, yeah, art is magic.
For sure.
Thank you for opening my eyes. That was awesome. I'm so excited. I also wrote down language is God. I needed to hear that. That was really.
If you want to read a really interesting book, read a book by a philosopher named Gustave Doré called La Parole. It's he's a French philosopher, but it's essentially a phenomenology of language. It's a short, accessible book that sort of talks about the way that language makes the world. And it's very approachable. And it gives a lot of like examples that you're like, obviously this is talking about language, you know, obviously everything is language when you read Gustave Doré. So
that makes me so happy.
Is that no, I'm saying that wrong.
That's right? Good because I tried to Google it and I didn't know what I was doing.
Oh, Gustave Doré is a printmaker. I'm looking at his stuff. Gustave. That's what it is. I have to use my augment here to. Yes, it's Gustave is his name. Gustave Doré is an amazing printmaker from the 1800s. But La Parole is by Gustave, Gusdorf. And that is a really cool phenomenology of language, short, accessible text.
Thank you. What am I missing? What have I forgotten to get to in my excitement?
Wow, we've gone kind of the whole circuit. I don't know. Like so
Sorry. I wanted to put in the comments the
only things that I've maybe we haven't touched on is like call to action, you know, it's like the deadline for entering is December 15th.
Yep, that's important. Yes.
January 26th will be the day of the Speak Your Piece contest. In National Poetry Month, we will have the publication and event surrounding that.
National Poetry Month is April. Deadline for submissions to the Radical Hospitality Project is December 15th. We are looking for prose of 500 words or fewer, and a one-page poem, I believe. The real thing here is looking at if you can read it in 3 minutes, because that will be all the time you are allotted at the performance. Right. And also otherwise it would get really long. Full details are all over our socials and also at mwcqc.org. There we go. I got the details.
Yeah.
I'm not even reading them. Okay, cool. Any final notes you want to leave us with? I want to make sure I don't take over an hour of your time.
I don't know. I've said so much. I better just leave it at that.
Be good people.
Yes. Be excellent to each other.
Oh, that's so good. Okay, so I say upcoming events at the Midwest Writing Center. Whew. Okay, we're gonna do this really fast because I have to, or I will forget things. It's just a habit for me to talk really fast when I do this. Saturday is the release date and release party for Shelley Moore Guy's book, The Family Tree. This is the true story of a Black Quad Cities family that settled here after the Civil War, during the Civil War, escaped enslavement to join the Civil War. It's a really, really wonderful story. Shelley is an incredible writer, an incredible storyteller. She'll do a little talk. She'll read the book. It's a middle grade book, so really, really good for really all ages because everyone can interact with it. It has gorgeous illustrations from Gwen Patton. This event will be at 5:30 p.m. this Saturday, November 11th at the Broadway. That's on 4th Avenue in Rock Island. The first and third Saturday of every month from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. we have Writers Studio. We have both an online group and an in-person group. The in-person group meets at MWC, that is on the ground floor of the Rock Island Public Library downtown branch on 4th Avenue and 19th Street. The online group hangs out with me on Zoom. The link to that is all over the place, but you can also throw us a comment or a private message if you would like that link. We will be supporting a book tour from Theodore Wheeler on tour for his book, The War Begins in Paris, a historical fiction novel. That event will be December 2nd, I believe the Quad City stop will be, but he'll also be in Iowa City and Chicago, and it's going to be a really fun book. I believe it's from one of the big five, so it's pretty fun to be able to get such big name out here. We're looking into year-end giving. If you are looking to make your charitable year-end donation go twice as far, now is the time to donate to the Midwest Writing Center. I think that is it for the rest of the year. We're hunkering down, getting into planning for next year. When in January, I'm going to just go ahead and announce this. You'll start seeing me promoting this event here soon, but in January we will have, oh my goodness, have I entirely forgotten the name of the person? Let's hope not. Let's just be real quick and make sure that I don't make mistakes. We're going to have a really great fiction workshop coming up in January with Logan Hoffman-Smith. Okay, I didn't get the name wrong, but I was really nervous. Who is a Writers Workshop graduate, and it'll be about really fleshing out your fiction. So that'll be a really fun one. I want to leave everyone here with us with a prompt, and that prompt, of course, today is to write into the topic of radical hospitality. I usually tell you to put 5 minutes on that timer and give yourself just 5 minutes to work on the piece. Just 5 minutes to yourself, to your writing, but take all the time you need with this, of course. Don't stop if it's not time to stop. And if you have questions about Radical Hospitality, the Radical Hospitality Project, send us a message. Send us an email. My information will be in the description on YouTube, but also if you're on socials, hit the send message button. Thank you so much, John, for this project, for collaborating with Midwest Writing Center, and for hanging out with me today. As always, to the world, please write more light into your life.